I sent it today, but the kid policies, that was sent 2 weeks ago. But I re-put it in the email. Now that Mark's done some research on it, I will message him. Well, Janet wrote it. I'm waiting for her
It is. Do you know how long it took to write? So I just looked at quite a few PID policies around Utah, then some from out of state and everything. And I kind of compilated the best of what I've seen. And then also kind of taking into consideration more some of the issues I see in reading some of the PID policies as well as the statutes regarding them. And the other thing I did was read a bunch of the governing documents that I could find online in Utah. And it looks like they all come from one generic form that someone drafted. Like if you look at all of them, it's similar boilerplate. And then people kind of change them up to fit whatever. Hmm. Yeah. And you can also tell, like, I mean, they're still using this master form, which has the old language where they can, use the PID funds for maintenance, ongoing maintenance, which you can't do. So,
We do now.
Hey, Jeremy. The screens are not on. Even after I push the power button.
Yeah, they're not showing anything.
That's what I messaged you. Oh, I said they're anyway.
it says no signal. Um, One of the big concerns I have with a lot of these, particularly the governing documents, is there's no good remedies kind of delineated. It just says, remedies as provided by law. Well, what is that? Some of the governing documents I've seen, the remedies include, you don't give out the disbursements if things aren't looking right. And obviously, we got to be on top of the accounting and all of that. And that's going to cost a chunk of money. Other ones that I saw as far as remedies is that then they would have to repay. We could recall any reimbursements we've done before. But I think the bigger issue is maybe some misuse and problems down the road. And then again, all of this is like time consuming. I mean, if we're going to be monitoring it, obviously, I think we're going to have to outsource like accounting and making sure that their financials are on board and that they're using the funds for what they can use it for. So there's a lot of monitoring there.
So the county would be the oversight, not their PID board?
Yeah, I think we are the oversight as the creating entity. Now, I know with the bonds, the bond issuers, they're going to be checking that too. But I really think if we're the creating entity, we better have a handle on it and know exactly where it's going. So then in doing the PID policy, I did it in different stages, mostly kind of looking at our costs because it's going to affect pretty much every office and department in the county. And so like I did like a pre-application and they pay $1,000 just for the pre-application to figure it out. Then just a standard application, I went off the bond amount. I wanted it tied to how complicated and how big their max bond levying amount. So I think it ends up being around 10,000 to whatever, depending. But you're really not seeing, and I think Mark made this point, you're really not seeing, like the PIDs we've been approving, we're not elsewhere around. They're bigger developments and larger amounts. Like, I don't know how they're getting it to pencil out on these smaller projects. One of the other concerns I have is that it's for infrastructure. What happens when the PID dissolves and is gone? Who's maintaining it? And who's maintaining the infrastructure after that first year when they can't use any of the PID stuff for maintenance and improvements? And
If it's, that's what it should be. If the infrastructure is being dedicated to the county, then the obligation to maintain is the same as any other public infrastructure.
Yep.
So I think the issue comes when it's private roads. So for example, the one that was just recently passed, the roads, and Josh can kind of speak to this if needed, but all the roads are private, so those wouldn't be dedicated. I think the only one that's done it appropriately is Wasatch Peaks, because they created their own districts for road maintenance. Even in the Rome subdivision, there are private roads that, once again, when the PID expires, there's no entity, district that owns that to maintain it.
So I thought that they couldn't use it for roads if the road was going to remain private.
Well,
Because the very definition of a PID, it's a public infrastructure, right? Is
and
that
that's
still
something that we
considered
looked
public
into,
infrastructure?
but I think it's still considered public infrastructure, because otherwise,
Shared.
because it's for the benefit of the public. Think of like private water company, but it's still providing a public service. And so as long as, so in Wasatch Peaks, for example, they have the road and fire district, and they also have the utility district. And so those are going to be districts that will continue to assess just those people that are in their PID area to maintain those roads. But if we look at Rome right now, if you've driven through, there are some public streets that the county will maintain and have been dedicated to the county. But in those townhomes, anyway, those roads are super narrow. They don't have any snow storage. Where they do have a sidewalk, it's going to be covered with snow in the winter. There's all this maintenance and some issues there. But at the end of the PID time frame, which could be up to 40 years if they renegotiate it, I think the question is who takes over maintenance of that, because under the statute, as Janet was pointing out, it looks like it needs to be some sort of government entity, whether that's a special service district or the county or a city.
Why can't it be the Why can't it be the association for the townhomes?
Because under the statute, because an HOA isn't like a government entity that would have taxing power the same way.
Right, I understand that.
And
So you're
so-
saying that PID statute requires it to be maintained by an infrastructure district or other public.
Right. And it kind of, and Janet, maybe you know where that is. I don't know exactly where it's at, but I think I think there's some inconsistency with the state codes where it relies upon bond issuance in a different chapter. And I can't remember off the top of my head which chapter that is. And when you go to that chapter, it says that only public, like government entities or special service districts, can maintain those roads. So it may be something in the state code that needs to be cleaned up, but we're kind of a guinea pig, because Rome was one of, I think they told me, one of the first 2 or 3 in the state that was even passed.
So, but it's not even once the 40 years has passed, because the PID can't be used for maintenance, right? So maintenance starting year 1 has to be covered, or year 2, I guess, because the first year is under the warranty period if it's going to be turned over to the public. But in the case of these roads that were never intended to be public, the county does not intend to accept those. The HOA is going to have to deal with them, right?
And maybe.
And I hope this doesn't force us to take a road, because that is a huge problem. And if so, we need to talk to our legislators about updating this legislation fast.
Mr. Chair, do you mind if I just
No,
interject? 'Cause
go
I
ahead.
think I can answer the question, so what Wasatch Peaks did, which I think is the correct way to handle this, is they did PIDs for the bond financing, right? And then they established LIDs for the ownership, operation, and maintenance in perpetuity of so they have 2. They have one for roads and fire district, and then the other one is for all the utilities. And so they establish LIDs, which are just like a special service district, and in that they have a taxing district, and they have a board, and they function almost identically. And those guys, the LID in a private situation similar to what we would have, instead of their HOA running it, which the state code currently doesn't allow, they have an LID that runs it. And if you look at the latest legislation that passed, it was Jim Dunnigan was the sponsor this year. He really emphasized, Janet did a good job of saying, hey, what was the original intent of PIDs, right? And it was for communities to be able to finance old infrastructure and to be able to pay for it over time. And then based on my conversation with Mike Schultz, it was like, Mark, we never intended it to be used the way it's being used now. We pictured the Inland Port project. We pictured Wasatch Peaks Ranch. He said these huge projects that need that can't get that financing with a normal financial institution like a bank, because it's just too big, and more importantly, the duration to build it out and to sell the lot is so long that these PIDs made sense for that, right? And so Schultz currently really dislikes the way they're kind of being what he called abused, but at the same time, I feel like they definitely have a purpose. It's just the intent was originally for older neighborhoods or whatever, and now they're working out really good for huge developments. Like Weber County says $10 million, unless it's $10 million project, we're not even gonna look. Because it's discretionary, the way you said in your policy, proposed policy. But now that we're seeing smaller projects like Rome, or even this Peaks Townhome project, that probably won't pencil, by the way. I mean, because it's hundreds of thousands of dollars in, just setting them up, and the bond counsel and the underwriters and everything else, and meeting all the requirements. Because of that, I think that we're going to see. I think we're right on the brink, and Schultz agrees with me on this, that we're on the brink of almost everyone coming in wanting a PID, just because the developers then get the residents to pay for the improvements instead of them having to pay for them themselves. A lot of them will weed themselves out because it costs a lot of money to do these, and they're so sophisticated. And I think that's what Dunnigan did. He's supposed to call me back, and I'll have more information about this. But I think when he sponsored this latest legislation, which you've read, it's like they're kind of encouraging the use of lids or land use districts to actually build and then maintain, because you have to pay the bond off in those before occupancy. So the developer still gets the benefit of financing a project that the banks wouldn't finance for various reasons. They get the bonds to finance them, but they have to pay them off before, and so the tax burden doesn't go to the people that bought the home. They don't have an extra $6,000 a year, $5,000, whatever, tax bill on top of, or compared to the person across the street. And so it almost appears that the state's pushing the lids so that they can build them with the lids and then maintain them with these special service districts called land improvement districts that are very, very similar to what we traditionally know as a special service district with a board and everything else. But I do think the answer with private roads, let's say that one that was approved does pencil, they're able to do it. The only way I can see them to be able to proceed is if they come up with an LID. So, however, the LID will probably just be for the roads in Stormbreak, because you've got the Highlands that would be willing to sign a certificate that says we will own, operate, and maintain, our water line, possibly. Then you've got the sewer improvement district that will be able to sign the same document that says, yes, you can dedicate those to us. We'll take over the responsibility for ownership, operation, and maintenance. So you've got those utilities already established that can do it, but with the roads and storm drain, you don't have it. Because the HOA can't do it, they're gonna have to use a lid under the current legislation. So it's Vance with Wasatch Peaks Ranch. He's their financial guy. He was telling me that all these attorneys in Denver are calling him because they want to get into the Utah market. He says that's how this snowball's starting to roll. So I'm so grateful we have at least something right now to look at so that we can start addressing some of these issues. And it'll be interesting to see. I always like to go back to the intent. And when I talk to Dunnigan, it's going to be like, what did you intend these to be used for? Because that'll help us filter out what we do want to, approve PIDs for. So another thing, the way Weber County does it is the developer or the development has to go through the approval process, and then they'll consider the PID. And then that's another process, and then the county commission there doesn't even see it until staff and the consultants on their review committee determine it's feasible, which is a long and lengthy process. There's no way around that, though. It's just a very complicated way to finance. So, and again, I think the perfect example is the one next to the airport, the inland port, where a bank's like, look, we're not going to pay for a 10-year project. We can't get it. We can't give you the money to build a 10-year long. It's going to take you 10 years to sell all those warehouses, to build all the infrastructure. We can't do that. So then they go to the PID, and it works out great because that's, the bond. When you sell a bond, they're like, yeah, well, that looks great. We'll, 5% over 30, 40 years, whatever it is. It works out great for things like that. But I do think this is a good first step in us understanding at least maybe the fact that, we have a process to follow when others come in. Because even Rome I consider to be extremely small compared to what the intent was. But then again, that's just my interpretation based on all the people I've talked to. And of course, I've read the codes as well. But anyway, hope that answers your question.
When was Rome approved?
It was May or June of 2021, and the reason I know that, it was my first or second meeting, and I was researching what a PID was while the governing document was being approved. So it was, and it wasn't even available. It wasn't available until 2021, and usually they don't go into effect until May 3rd, 4th, 5th, whatever that first, I think, Monday of May is when most of the legislation from the 2021 or whatever year session is, it goes into effect that first, I think it's Monday in May. I think just maybe bringing up some concerns that I've heard from residents and people in the building is there's multiple impacted parties when we're talking about a PID. And so of course we've got the developer, and then we've got the end user, and those are the two that I think the developer usually talks about the most. But we also have the county employees, and then we've got the residents. And in our multiple discussions with, multiple people that are seeking for PIDs, there seems to be a focus on, the benefit to the county, how much it benefits the county, but and the end user by having lower rated financing. But I think a question that Josh asked them to provide information for, which never was provided, was, at the end of the day, because of the PID, what's the savings to the end user on the front end? And so, anyways, as we've been discussing internally and meeting with various representatives, I think it probably is always a win for the developer. Maybe there's times where it's not. I think potentially it could be a win for the end user, but that would only be if there was some transparent discount that could be shown. But even when Josh has gone back to look at the Rome PID, for example, they were talking about affordable housing, being able to sell them for $350,000, for example. But the market dictates what they sell for. It's not, oh, well, we're going to save you $150,000 or $200,000. And so the end user is ultimately benefited because they can pay that over the course of 30 or 40 years at a lower amortization rate, basically. But what happens is those that are in the PID, and I got a call from someone who is in the real estate market, and he bought a single family home within the Rome PID, and he was shocked at how much, even after reading all the disclosures. I don't think people understand how much it's going to be. And so now he's thinking, well, can I get out of this? What does this look like? Am I going to be paying this for so long? Is there anything we can do? Well, at this point, the disclosures were made. You purchased the home, so I guess you could try to sell it, but you're kind of stuck with it as is. So that's an impact to the end user, but it also impacts the community as a whole, or the residents, the taxpayer, because every time there's a PID, it inflates the housing market, which is already somewhat unaffordable. I know that that's a big deal that's talked about in the commission a lot, is, you know, we want the commercial and we want the affordable housing. Well, if the PID, you know, would allow something to be sold for a lower price, if there's people willing to pay more, then it just inflates that market. And now that $150,000 or $200,000 discount on the front end that they were hoping for, now people are willing to pay that and the PID. Now it's just inflating the market throughout the county as well. So I think that kind of accounts for the 1, 2, and 4. The third one would be the county employees that are dealing with the calls. Every time these calls come in, and I think, so I'm working on getting some letters from Janelle, the assessor, because her office has been getting quite a few calls. Kimberly with the treasurer's office, and I think the clerk's office are the three that I've talked to that say they're starting to get calls on the Rome PID, which we don't even understand the impacts of that until 3 years later, and the impacts right now are even less than they will be once it's fully built out. So we're starting to see those impacts. And the time that they spend trying to explain PIDs, or even saying, hey, call so-and-so, they're like, well, they are not answering my questions, so they're calling here, because maybe as a whole the county is just more willing to sit down and try and explain it. But they say, we can't even explain it very well, and so the time that our offices spend, that's something that's born, well, not only is it a resource drain on our offices, but it impacts number 4 too, the taxpayers that are paying for us to answer questions about a PID. And so, you know, I think just as we're looking at this, keeping in mind who all the potentially impacted parties are is a good thing, because it's not only the developer and end user, there's other considerations to keep in mind. And if the county is hoping for more commercial and affordable housing, and you know, maybe there could be some incentives that are somehow built into a PID policy that would say, okay, these are the types of things that the county as a whole would be more interested in justifying the PID. But there may be some restrictions on, you know, no private roads, or if you have a private road, then you have a lid that can continue maintenance in perpetuity. So those are some of the
So
things.
why would we even want PIDs? We have no problem with developing Morgan without them. Why do we want to deal with them?
Well, I think that that's a question for the commission. As staff, I think there's generally a feeling of we don't like the impact on our offices by these PIDs, but once again, they're not the decision makers that are sitting in the meetings when they're getting approved. And I think the point I was trying to make is going back to 2021, when we were the second, third, or fourth, whatever it was, we were one of the earliest PIDs that was passed, since I believe the legislation went into effect the first week of May 2021, and by the end of May or beginning of June, we already passed a PID. It probably was premature before we had a policy, before we fully understood the impact, and so I was just communicating the impact that we're seeing right now to hopefully provide insight going forward of how we can protect the county overall. You know, what do we, you know, we don't want to drain the county resources, inflate the market, or impact the taxpayer for the county having to answer questions about the PID. And so I think there's just some other considerations, and in some cases, the way that it was intended to be, I think it may make sense and it probably would work, but I don't know that the ones that have been coming forward recently are the ones that it was intended for or would work for.
So just to be cognizant of time, because it's 4:30, this was in the packet that you guys received, this PID policy, when Peaks and Range were last both on the agenda. But just wanted to get you to actually hear in person in this work session the people that actually created this document. Do you have any, obviously this, more reading needs to go into it. Do you have any action items going forward that you want them to clarify for you, or anything specific to the PID policy before we possibly put it before commission for vote?
And then any questions for Mark, I think, too,
Or
because
questions
he's
for Mark or
less
Janet while they're
available,
here. Yeah.
overall.
I don't have any questions. I just don't like it.
But at least this puts in processes, regardless of the commission passing it or not passing it at the end of the day, that if you want to, there's possibly a $10,000 price tag for it to go through the process, and we're not eating that cost.
Okay.
Well, and I brought this up in the meetings when we reviewed these with the folks from the financial institutions that are really pushing it. I assume because they get a nice commission on selling these financial products. The county does have a burden to bear long-term on this. I think that's easily understood and viewed. $10,000 up front's not going to pay that over the lifetime, over 40 years of answering phone calls and angry residents because they're paying extra. It sounds like if the intent was to be used for larger projects, maybe that's what we ought to consider, is saying, like, who was it that mentioned the Weber County? If it's not $10 million or more in infrastructure, we won't even look at it. Maybe we need to consider adding that to our policy of a minimum, so that we're not dealing with these little small things that just don't make a lot of sense. That's also a lot of wasted time on our end to review it. If in the end it doesn't pencil, like you mentioned, why are we going through that? And I get the $10,000 or the fees. I guess it's $1,000 for the initial and then a $10,000 minimum for the secondary review. But even at that, who knows if that'll cover it? I don't know. That's one thought. I like the idea of allowing financial tools. I think the lids probably would take care of that for these smaller projects and would probably work a little better, because it doesn't put us on the hook long term to deal with residents. So
How
maybe
do-
that's
How do
that
we
could be
deal
part
with
of the policy.
I remember reading an email that in question were the costs of the infrastructure based on what the ask was. How do we deal with that? Because to me,
If they're asking for $10 million worth of infrastructure, but it's only going to cost them $5 million.
yeah, who oversees that so it's getting spent in the right places so the end consumer's not getting gouged on a PID?
I think our engineers,
I mean, in theory, you get an engineer's estimate, right? And maybe that's something we require as part of our policy, is say, this is going to require that
They pay for an
submit your
engineer.
project, and the county is going to get an engineer's estimate, and you're going to pay the cost for that,
And
and
a
we're going to
county
compare
bond
the two.
agent.
And if
Yeah.
they're within a certain percentage, great. But if they're way off, then we're going to question. I don't know, Mark, maybe you have a better
It was
idea.
such a smart question, because that's exactly what we dealt with in the last one. Is we saw 3.7 million, and we did an estimate with 1.7 million. And
1.1, I think.
1.1
Yeah, so
million.
3.7 down to 1.1.
Yes, they did inflate it, and trust me, our estimates are within 10%, and so it's like, gosh, they really inflated that thing. And that might be another reason, because Vance from Wasatch Peak said, Mark, I'm not sure you should limit it to 10 million. It might be like his personal experience, and he's done more than anyone I know, is he said, I can't get anything less than 200 lots to pencil. And so maybe we look at it more, I'm really not sure how to approach that. But if we say 10 million, then maybe the developers will inflate their project to 10 million just to get on the review committee. Whereas if we use the number of units, that, I don't know, something for consideration though, because the question you ask is exactly what we dealt with. Yeah. An inflated estimate.
And they don't have to reconcile how they're using that to anyone?
That's not really. So the ones that I've worked on have been large. There was estimates of the cost of the improvements to be completed that were included in the package that went to for the bond financing. As the work is completed, the developer submits receipts for the monies expended or invoices if they're not advancing it, which is reviewed by the PID board and their agents and approved, and then submitted to the issuer of the bond for drawdown on the bond proceeds. If they don't spend the money, they can't pull the bond proceeds and just say, oh, and here, $2 million for fun at the end, please send me the check.
So it's much like getting a construction loan on a home.
Works very much
Same
like a
idea.
construction loan.
Why can't they do construction loans versus a PID?
Sometimes they can, they just pay more in interest.
So as an action item, do you want us to make sure those securities are in there? Do you want another work session?
I think we ought to look at,
I think we
I'm-
gotta have the stuff in it that we want.
yeah.
Right, and that is probably a county bond agent and a county engineer
and accounting-
component as well.
accounting.
And I'm sorry?
And an accounting.
That's the county bond agent. That's what Wasatch does, is they make them pay for the county bond.
And then some type of minimum, I don't know what that looks like, and I
A
don't know, do you have
minimum
any
as far as
experience on
project
what
minimum?
No, like I said, all the ones I've done have been
Thank you,
bid.
Janet.
Cost.
I've been a little surprised that some of these smaller projects come in for bids. It doesn't seem like it's worth the hassle for them.
Is that something
With
we-
respect to the county's response to residents, I think it might be worth putting together a response that's on our website so that people can say, we're not the public infrastructure district. Those disclosures were included in your real estate documents, but we have put a statement on our website that explains the basic way that this works. Because I don't think they should have, I don't even know that it's good for them to sit on the phone and try to explain it. You know?
I agree. And if we say things wrong, I think just
it causes
the
a problem.
potential issues arising from that. I mean, I don't think anyone should be trying to explain a PID who hasn't spent however many hours. I don't know that I could explain it, and I spent, we spent 9 hours probably in total in recent months in commission meetings, plus, maybe 15 working just with the applicants, plus however many more with staff. And I couldn't say that, I'm a PID expert yet. I know a lot more than I did when I started, but I think they are
Even the question about private ownership, I'd like to see how those things work together, because if I go to the definition in the Public Infrastructure District Act, it says for the definition of public infrastructure, go to the Inland Port Act, and the Inland Port Act has a provision for privately owned things. So if there's something else that's inconsistent, then I have to.
And that's when it talks about issuing bonds, and then it goes to the bond section of the code, which limits it to what it can be issued for. And so that's where, it's referencing multiple parts, and I think when you're doing something so big, you're bound to have some inconsistencies or things that weren't thought of when it was first drafted, so.
So will action adding language for a county bond agent, a county engineer review, a project minimum, and then draft language for a county response to residents for PID to be posted on the county website? And then do you want that back in a work session? Do you want a draft sent out for just agenda review and approval? What would you prefer?
Yeah, let's get a draft out and then have a work session.
Another work session?
So we can
Awesome.
review the draft before the work session. We'll try to keep the work session really brief.
Okay.
So I have
Um,
one question on it.
Yeah, before you do that, can I just, because there was one other thing from someone in the clerk's office that's dealing with the business licenses. There's a lot of short-term rentals that are coming in for Rome. And when they're short-term rentals, these, companies with capital can buy in the housing developments, which pushes the first-time home buyers out of the market a little bit more. And so I think as the county attorney's office, working with the planning office, we can be better at reviewing development agreements and, putting restrictions in or things like that could help avoid at least what we've seen in Rome and how it was presented versus what it's become in reality.
Okay, my question then is with the one that we did do just recently, is there any, are they gonna have to follow this PID ordinance? Are they grandfathered into?
So they're approved already. But I think it's still, that question will still go back to what Mark shared earlier, is if it doesn't pencil, if they can't get a bond, like a bond at $1 million, or I think they might have told me under 2 million, it doesn't really make sense. And so as they go further down the process and they realize, okay, we really don't have the numbers to make this pencil, then even though it's approved, they may not use it.
Okay.
So on the short-term rental question, I know there are some jurisdictions, I think Ivans is one of them, that has done an ordinance addressing short-term rentals and more directed at making sure that how they're managed. So you don't have everybody doing it through VRBO. There's a professional management company that's managing and requiring them to have, if not an on-site presence, something that can be present within a matter of minutes as opposed to hours or days. So.
And that's something that,
So we do require that under our code, but I may just look at
Well, maybe we ought to
other
consider if the
ordinances.
if the real concern is that we're destroying neighborhoods, at least the culture of a neighborhood, because an entire neighborhood is becoming STRs, then we need to probably talk about limitations on numbers of STRs, whether that's in a specific area or county-wide or how that looks.
Or the areas where you permit them are.
Right, I think
Or they're
that's
only
probably-
permitted in certain, maybe it makes sense to have an entire community of short-term rentals, right? Like that may make sense in a certain area of the county, and then other areas maybe not so much, I don't know. But I think those are the questions we ought to look into. Because to me, that's the bigger problem is, I don't know that and maybe you have, I have not heard a lot of complaints about, loud parties and things like that. Like, that's typically not the issue, and the reason that's not an issue is because the hosting platforms don't allow that anyway. If you get caught having a big party and you rented through Airbnb, they're going to kick you off and they'll help the host kick you out. So that's typically not the issue. The issue is people coming in, buying up the homes, turning all of them into short-term rentals. We lose any affordable housing opportunity, which is a big deal, and you lose a sense of community. So I think both of those could be dealt with by limiting the number of STRs to some degree. I think we need to be careful how we do that, because I also believe in property rights, and the landowner should be able to do some things with their home within reason. So anyway.
we also have another problem with STRs that I've already talked to Josh about, but we need to consider in our code, it says that only if you are a resident or a management company that is within our county can you do an STR other than through Airbnb and VRBO or those kinds of entities.
I think what it says is that if you're gonna do a short-term rental, you are required to have a local entity or management company within Morgan County in order to even set it up, regardless of what website you go with.
Yeah.
That's a requirement.
Well, we've clearly got a problem with people not registering properly too, which means we're leaking tax revenue.
Well, I'm not allowed by
Eventually.
law to even look for them.
So, and that's what we're trying to do through tourism and also through,
So what's interesting though is if they're hosting through Airbnb or Vrbo, the hosting platforms are collecting that tax revenue money. So I don't know what they're doing with it, but they're collecting it and remitting it
They are-
typically to the state.
they are
I don't know if they're
submitting
coming,
it.
if we're getting our cut of it or not.
We are getting, well, and that's something, even RBO.
Not registered here.
Airbnb, they are submitting it, and it does show up as coming in as an RBO or VRBO or an Airbnb. It shows it on the SOTA report or on the tax sales report. It shows that it is coming in. The problem is when they've gone and done an Airbnb or a VRBO, then they do it to say, well, why should I be paying those fees? I'll just do it on my own. And when they do it on their own, we're not getting any tax return from it, which is what we're supposed to be doing, is a sales tax and a TRT tax. And that's where we've got to strengthen the rules for an STR.
But that's what the one you pointed out is intended to do. That's why they're supposed to have a license management.
A
company.
license management.
Company.
But if Mike decides he has an Airbnb here in town, and he decides that he's going to, he's already finished up with the Airbnb and the VRBO, and he says, well, I can create my own website, and I can go ahead and do it myself, and I can collect all that money, and I don't have to charge you taxes.
Well, what
Because
you
I know that
typically have is people
happens.
using all three. They're typically using the hosting platforms and will take direct bookings as well.
But I'm just saying that we do have a problem because the clerk's office has found it for us. They've already
that
started to
doesn't
find it
surprise
for
me.
us, and we're short.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay.
Okay,
Mark.
so we
Well,
have
we
our.
prohibited from looking. I think you're prohibited from utilizing the online platforms to identify.
That is correct. But if people complain about them, then we can do it.
And that's one of the biggest thing is if the neighborhood complains, we need to have a place for them to contact, whether it be the planning department or whatever.
Well, that is, we already have a place to contact. That is the planning
At
department. Josh is
24
our,
24 hours, 7.
sorry, what's
Code
the title?
enforcement.
Code enforcement.
Yeah,
Code enforcement.
that's another hat
Why don't we have any,
Other duties.
how come we do not have any enforcement within that planning department?
We do, and so when,
Yeah.
but I think we can address that offline because I know Kate's getting a little
Yeah, let's
angry
come back
at
to
me
that. We
for
gotta,
not.
we gotta get through
We
this.
could do this
ARPA
another
item.
time.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think
We have our
that's
marching
something
orders.
in the code that we can talk about.
Okay.
Okay, so thanks to Mark and Janet for coming in on that. I appreciate them staying, and Mark coming in. So one of the things you guys want to talk about in work session from last meeting was ARPA. Before we go through ARPA, I want to just go through what you spent your CARES money on. So the difference between them is CARES money could not be spent on anything that wasn't budgeted. And we did claim all of our ARPA funds as lost revenue. So we could essentially spend those on any way, in the same way that we would spend any other county revenue item. Part of why I want to highlight how we spent CARES is CARES, because it had to be unbudgeted, and because it was just thrown at us so quickly, there wasn't a lot of proper procedure followed in it. I can find in county minutes $147,730.50 that was approved to be spent as a full commission, and obviously we spent 1.7. 614,000 of that was in broadband expansion. Emergency services, a lot of that was match funding, which is why it got spent. And then obviously, we had a lot of COVID supplies that needed to be put in place. So that's where your CARES Act funds went.
Can we go back onto that just a second?
Yep.
Okay, go back up there, go down to the CARES fund,
Okay.
and a majority of it all happened before we got into office.
Correct.
And so before that.
July
when they-
21st, 2020 is the bulk of it.
Right, and it was supposed to be done by December 31st of 2020, and we took office in 2021. But anyway, the Beehive Broadband, they had another $150,000
Correct.
that was added into there, and it's not
Correct.
showing here.
Yes, it is.
Where?
It was 150, 150, and 214.
Yeah, it's part of the 5.
It was 3 allocations.
But they had another, they took up to $600 and some odd thousand dollars. $650,000 because there was an additional amount made at the end of the year, because I was in the
Correct.
meetings.
Correct.
And it was in the meetings,
was the
and they took it
214.
for Young Street up to East Canyon, up to
That was
Highway
the
60.
214 that she mentioned.
There was 3
There was
invoices.
150 some odd thousand is what
There's-
they put into
There's
it.
3 invoices.
You guys were involved in it, but I mean,
Yeah, I know, that's what I'm telling you. The total was the 514, it wasn't
No.
600 and something.
they got a lot more than that.
The total of 600
okay,
in
I can-
the Liberty broadband.
We'll go through it later.
But you found those the approval of that in the minutes.
The 150?
Well,
Well, all of
the
those.
total amount for Beehive.
No. Well, we'll talk about that.
We had meetings where.
I know we had meetings, but we didn't
All
officially
done
say
in
like, we're gonna pass
commission
150,000. It's so, for example, like this is Mike's, I'm gonna throw Mike under the bus here. Mike Newton, July 21st, 2020 meeting. They had a huge spreadsheet that I can't read because it wasn't in the county agenda packet. Look like that. Okay, so then in the minutes, this is the only place you find it, and it just says, Member Newton approved the following expense items to be paid for out of CARES Act funding. Server upgrade laptops, MiFi internet, county facilities for COVID busters, county facilities COVID mitigation, assessor expenses, emergency management COVID busters, HVAC fire EMS station, 2 Lucas mechanical chest compression devices, seconded by Member Swan, vote was unanimous. And then we have these cost estimates. So it wasn't like, we're approving $150,000 for this, and we're approving $10,000 for this. You guys were essentially saying, the previous commission, this is what we want to spend it on, this is what we're approving it to be spent on, but until it's paid for, because everything jacked up in price every other day, there's no way for us to know. So, in that, and I deep dove on this. That's why it took so long. We went vendor by vendor. Beehive to date in the county finances has only received $514,000 from the county in 3 allocations. So then going up to the ARPA project, again, we had some things that were voted on and some things that were voted on but not spent because that was that initial conversation about a minimum of $100,000 that Commissioner McConnell proposed for a minimum of $100,000 commitment from the county for the water district for the city, water district for Mountain Green, and the Taggart's River to access improvements. We've never expended any funds on the latter 2. Other ones we've spent monies, but I can't find where it was ever approved in budget. Some are like the 2 new sheriff's deputies was a 5-year projection. It was $600,000.
That was 3 years, not 5 years.
3 years? Okay.
Yeah, I don't know where 5 years
Yeah.
came from.
I was just going off what I can hear in the minutes. So that's a 3-year projection, $600,000. We're already at 228,415.11. That started August of 2022. That payroll is being paid out of that fund. So I guess we are on track for that. The fairgrounds plan a little over budget. Sheriff's radios way over budget. We didn't really budget for commission room audio visual. That was never really passed, but we spent it. Grateful we spent it. So in my math, we're sitting at a $908,000 of uncommitted, and I'm not including the Morgan City water infrastructure $100,000, and I'm not including the Taggart's River access improvements $100,000 commitment from the September 7th, 2021 meeting, 908,000 fund balance. So if you deep dive into this, I have all these tabs of the progression of the budget on this, from the working budget to the first budget discussed. And in that, one of the first things scrapped was the recorder's office, 500,000 for the documents and doing the base infrastructure. It was scratched at the time in the meeting minutes because they didn't think it met. At the time, they hadn't given us the language of lost revenue, so we weren't sure we could even use it for that purpose. So we scratched it because we didn't think it met the statutory, or, well, not the statutory, but the requirements of what we could or could not spend ARPA on, and we totally can spend it on that. So looking at the last budget discussed in session, we have completed some of these projects, but some have not. So at the time, you had 2 different projects for Taggart's. You've already completed more than what you offered for sewer district. Liberty Broadband, there's another 50,000 in there, but we've already given them 100,000 in CARES Act. That never got done. Fire EMS radios was completed. 2 deputies was completed. You did give 75,000 for the attorney's office for case backlog. We did not do anything with cell phone tower. We did not create a distribution site. And let's see. Yeah, we didn't do anything with that, and I don't know on this one. I can't find anything where ARPA money was committed to the building renovation of
It
the
was
train
not.
station. Okay, so I think
And-
that's
and
being done with
doesn't
other
need to-
funding.
It was done through the city did all that. through
Okay,
that.
so this was the last budget, ARPA budget, that was brought forth to commission, and that was April 4th of 2022.
Okay.
So you're sitting on 908 in fund balance.
So we talked again about it on April 3rd of 2023.
Okay,
Um,
with a different budget?
yeah, but I don't know if there was a lot of changes.
There
Let me
was-
look and see.
There was also, I don't know if it's the same one, the CJCC building.
Yes.
We donated to.
41,000.
41,000 some odd.
Yep.
That's
on
not
there.
in-
And that was approved in the
25,000 for the
minutes, meeting
YCC.
minutes.
I'll email that to you right
Okay, because it didn't come out.
And the commission room audio visual, that was also approved by
Yeah, April.
contract, but not in
Oh, okay.
necessarily an ARPA meeting.
It was
It
in
just
this
came
meeting.
in a commission meeting
Yeah.
to use the ARPA dollars. And so I think there's a few holes that we can fill.
now. There's a lot of those that I
But-
think were
So
done that
that
way.
CJC?
Let's be clear, everything that was spent was approved by the commission.
Okay,
Every dollar in both categories was approved by the entire commission.
That's correct.
The way it was approved
Might
was
have been a little
different in
different,
almost
okay.
every category, because in some cases it was we were approving a section of things.
okay.
In other cases, it was a one-off thing. But
Okay.
Was the dome project not
No, not a part of
ARPA?
it.
no, that wasn't a,
So, I'm
That's
sorry, on the
economic.
CCJC, that was not on any of my reports. So if we gave funds,
To Weber County.
we committed 41,000. I think we gave them.
We gave it to.
But we gave it to-
didn't we?
Weber County, and it was just recent, or not, was it Weber County or was it?
Yeah, it's Weaver County.
Weber County, and it was just
So
this
it's a
year. Or not
CJC, and
24,
I
but
can-
23.
I'll forward that to you.
I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying it did not come out of that fund.
It hasn't, okay.
Which
So it
means
needs
it
to
came
be
out of the
transferred
general
to that
fund,
fund. It should have
yeah.
come out of that fund.
You thought April 23,
No, that would have been,
41,000,
it was about
41.
that, just under 41,000,
Just under
I think.
41,000.
4140,
Just under 41.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
just around.
just around that.
And we-
Yeah, and that's also when we approved the audio visual,
Okay.
65,000 for that, March 1st, 2023.
First.
Correct.
Yeah, 67. So how was it 106? What happened there? Do you know?
65 is what we have on this
Yeah.
spreadsheet, but I know when we approved that, we approved it with
At
contract.
67.
So we approved the contract amount, not,
Right,
You
which
know,
was
ultimately.
which was 67,000 some odd, 68. Jeremy can tell us someday.
I think there might have been a new bid. I can't remember
well, the
exactly
initial, I
how
think,
it
was an
went.
estimate, and then we
Yeah.
had an actual
The
bid.
initial one was 130 some odd $1,000, and then we ended up he came in with another bid because we didn't have enough bids, and we didn't necessarily like that bid, so he came back in. It was 69,000 was paid last year. That's what he just sent me a message. Oh, you guys can see it.
But I'm,
So why do we have 106?
that's how much was expended out of IT for, so I can go back and pull the actual receipts.
Well, I'm
Because
just
we
trying
also
to figure out
spent
what-
it in CARES. We also had money expended in CARES for IT stuff. See, IT COVID supplies, 106, and laptops. So I'll go pull the receipts if you guys are looking
Okay.
at them. Correct. No, it does not.
Good thing we got Jeremy to add those things in.
Well, we're gonna have to because we're at time. Okay,
Yeah,
so
we're
I
out
will
of
pull
time.
receipts for that one. So then expecting the CDC-JC, you're looking at 867, 192. And then Jared did send an email about 30 minutes ago about his preferences on how that be expended. So do you want to add this to a work session for next meeting? Okay, and I'll pull those receipts for IT. Do you want me to pull receipts for any of the other line items?
Yeah, because I didn't think the sheriff's radios were that much more.
They were.
Were they?
Oh, yeah.
Well,
Because they weren't
But that,
supposed
that
to be.
included the sheriff's and the fire department, which I think we had approved close to that amount between the
Yeah, it was
two.
all, I have every single receipt. And that's what we got.
Okay.
Yeah, so we originally budgeted for both the sheriff and for EMS radios. Trying to see the EMS ones.
And it doesn't, Motorola didn't break it out as,
So it all came as one, but. By the way, are those working well? The P95s?
yeah, and the good thing is because we just got them, now the new radio system is rolling over and ours are compatible, so now we don't have to buy new ones.
Yeah, it was a good
Yeah.
use of our different numbers. Okay. All right, so more discussion on this.
Okay.
Done.
Jeremy, since you're clearly listening and messaging me, do you want to switch monitors so we can do regular session?
Okay. All right, it is just past 5 o'clock. Welcome to the Morgan County Commission meeting, March 19th, 2024. Commissioner Anderson will not be joining us this evening. He's at another conference out of town. We will begin with an invocation and pledge of allegiance, and Commissioner Fackrell will take care of that.
Our dear Heavenly Father, this afternoon we're grateful for this opportunity to be here, to live in this county, and to be able to take care of the affairs of the government of this county, and to try to help with each citizen in this county and for the needs that they have and sometimes the wants. We are grateful for being able to have freedom in our country. We're grateful for this beautiful spring that we're having so far. And we pray that we will be prepared for what may come before us this year also, in the flooding and everything else. We pray for thy divine influence upon us in the decisions that we make. And tonight, in particular, we ask thee to help us with being able to make those decisions that are beneficial for our county, that we'll always be looking at the good for everybody within this valley. We're thankful for everything, and with it, say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Please arise and repeat with me the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Commissioner Fackrell. We will move to item B, our consent items. We have one item this evening, and that is the review and approval of the county commission meeting minutes for March 12th. Are there any adjustments to the minutes that have not already been provided?
On page 6, I guess it's item 5. the motion and/or reimbursed funds advanced. Just need a D on the end of advance. That's all I had.
I have a question on one of them.
Yes, sir.
On under where it says Commissioner McConnell, and it says the speaker expresses gratitude. What speaker is that? It was on page 15 of the packet, but it's in the commissioner comments on page 9. Yeah. I don't know who that speaker was, if it was Speaker Schultz or if it's Speaker Newt Gingrich or whoever it is back there, Johnson.
I think I was.
I was gonna say, I thought
You
it
are
was
the
just
speaker,
you.
aren't you?
I'm the speaker.
Okay, all right. Okay. Other than that, I thought it was pretty good.
Speaker McConnell.
Yeah.
What's a,
What's that?
Yak yak.
Speaker McConnell.
Okay. And then I have nothing.
okay. That will look for a motion to approve the minutes from the March
Now,
12th, 2024.
Before we begin, do we need to approve the work session ones on the 7th and the 12th, or do we not? Do we need to?
So
Yeah,
Minutes?
the work session minutes, because
we're
they're
going
in
to
here too.
renotice that just because the agenda today, it said approval of county commission meeting minutes for March 12th. So even though we got the March 7th work session minutes into the packet, it wasn't noticed on the agenda. So we're just going to renotice that at our next meeting, and we'll still be within the 30 days.
Okay, all right.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we approve the Morgan County Commission meeting minutes for March 12th, 2024.
Second?
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. Motion passes. Minutes are approved. Commissioners' declarations of conflict of interest for any items on this evening's agenda. Okay, seeing none, we will move to our public comment period. This is an opportunity for the public to address the commission. We do not have any public hearings on tonight's agenda, so this will be the only opportunity for the public to address the commission. If you'd like to do so, please come forward. Okay, seeing none, we will move to our presentations. We have one presentation this evening, and that is the County Interim Administrative Manager Report.
So the Dome RFP was published today and added onto our website. We've had some pretty awesome things going on in Morgan County. Our recreation manager, Lydia Hebden, was awarded the Outstanding Young Professional by Utah Recreation and Parks Association. That association will be coming before the commission sometime in this summer to present her with that award before the commission as well. So congratulations to her. If you've never been to a library board, they were probably the most organized Robert's Rules of Order following board I've ever sat in on their meeting. Very impressive. They did have an opening on their board. They had 5 excellent applications. They have extended, they read those at their meeting and have extended an offer to one of those applicants. They are working with Mountain Green Fire District on providing arts and aging projects in that, the fire district building, so that we are getting arts and aging projects on that side of the county as well. So, Odie with the fire district's been very gracious about them using the building as it's a county-wide project. Also, amazing news, Boyd Kerrigan, I'm just gonna read this. He applied for an EMS mental health grant and was awarded $52,570. His email stated, "I applied for this funding through the state with one thing in mind, and that's the health and welfare of our EMS staff. Over the years, we have seen an upswing in critical incidents responses like suicides, gunshots, and sudden death of people we know. It's these types of calls that create an unhealthy mental toll on everyone involved. This funding will give us access to resources for the development and maintenance of mental health resources specifically tailored to the needs of EMS personnel. This includes access to mental health professionals who understand the unique stressors and challenges faced by EMS providers. Peer support programs. Peer support programs have been shown to be highly effective in promoting mental well-being among EMS providers. Funding can support the establishment and maintenance of these programs, which provides EMS personnel with a supportive network of colleagues who understand their experience. Crisis intervention teams, long-term sustainability. Funding allows for the continued provision of resources and services to address evolving needs with the EMS community. There will be a lot of work involved in implementing the programs, but if we save one life or give our EMS staffing a better means of support, it's all worth it. So thank you very much, Boyd, for always taking care of your team and for seeking out that grant, and congratulations on being awarded it. Another great thing is we do have Dr. Robert Groh will be taking over as the Morgan County Fire EMS offline medical director / physician advisor. So Dr. Brett Earl will be our outgoing medical director as of June 1st. So his professional service agreement is in your folder for signature. And then the other thing he has coming up is actually on the agenda. So we just have an amazing team here. I don't think I have to tell you that too often, but I do, and I'm just grateful to be part of it. So that's all I have to report for today.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
do we have to have an approval of the board member for the library? And do we have to have an approval by the commission for the doctor?
Yes,
So
to both.
the library, she has to, they were extending to see if she still wanted it. So they will be coming forward with that, but they were just making sure she understood the parameters of what she was getting into. And as far as that contract, we didn't have it ready yet. I was just letting you know. So that'll be on the April agenda.
I just didn't want us signing something before it was supposed to be approved.
Agreed. Okay, we will move into our action items. First action item, Mr. Doug Garfield, request for a donation for the Morgan County Lions Club annual Easter egg hunt.
Thank you. I'll be brief with my presentation. I represent the Morgan County Lions Club, who is a civic organization here in the community. Tries to provide services to the youth of our community as well as others who may be in need. Each year we've sponsored an annual Easter egg hunt for the young people in our community for a lot of years. And we reach out to community members, businesses, Morgan City, and we're just reaching out to the county, see if they'd be willing to support in any way, financial support towards this year's Easter egg hunt, which will take place Saturday the 30th at Morgan County Recplex. And that's pretty much it. What we do is try to provide each of the youth who participate in the Easter egg hunt with an Easter basket. So I don't know if any of you had youth who participated in the past, but you'll understand hopefully what we're trying to do there. So I'm open to any kind of questions you may have.
Excellent. About how many youth do you expect on a regular basis?
It goes into the hundreds. We try to provide each youth with a basket. Baskets cost the Lions Club approximately $8 a piece. But it's several hundred youth that participate based on my experience with my own children years ago and now my grandchildren. But I don't know. Maybe some of you have attended before. It's a pretty big event as far as for the young people in the county.
Awesome. Thank you.
You bet.
Any other questions for Doug?
How much do you need?
Whatever you'd be willing to donate. I can give you an example. You know, this is my first year doing this, so I don't have a lot of experience. I just joined the Lions Club, and so they gave me a list of people to go out and see, and it varies according to businesses. Morgan City donated $200 towards this year's Easter egg hunt, so I can give you an idea. That was
Well, we can beat them.
Have we done this in the past?
No, we haven't. No, we haven't. No.
To my knowledge, we haven't.
Anything else? Thank you.
I'm fine with whatever.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that a donation to the Morgan Club for the Easter egg hunt in the amount of $400.
I'll second it.
A motion and a second to make a donation to the Lions Club for the annual community Easter egg hunt in the amount of $500. Do we have location we'd like to pull that from? Should we just do non-departmental?
That's my view.
Okay, non-departmental. Do you have the account number on that, Katie?
Yep.
Do you want me to pull it up? Just for the record, it's nice to have the GL.
It is. I will put it in the chat for her.
Non-departmental. I guess that'd be under professional and technical? No,
Yeah, your services otherwise classified.
service is not otherwise classified. There it is. That is 10-4150-340-000. Correct. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Appreciate it.
If I could ask that you don't run away, so we know where to send the check.
All right. Moving to action item number 2, Cindy Mikesell, canvass of the 2024 Democratic presidential primary election.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm here to get signatures on our canvas report that I sent out 308 ballots, 123 came back in, 40% turnout. And anything else you need to know about the canvas?
It's not
Hopefully
too
we
bad,
get
I
more
guess,
of a
voter turnout for a primary.
yes.
With only one option on the ballot, too,
Well, there
right?
was 5. There was.
But I mean, one office, right? Because it was just the
It
presidential.
was a
election.
Democratic presidential primary, so.
So how many of the, I know in the last election, there were some that were not, you told us how many were not valid and so forth. Were all of them valid on that day?
We had 123 votes valid. It doesn't count the overvotes, but that's in a report. I don't put that in our actual report. But if you want that in the actual report,
I'm just curious.
I'll give it to you.
I was just curious as well.
I didn't see my actual numbers on
Did
my-
Blaine win? That's all I want to know.
Who?
Blaine.
I'm not a
Yeah.
On the ballot?
I'm not a Democrat.
Blaine's the winner. So. But I'm just here to get signatures so I can send that to the state and finish it off, so.
Okay, I assume we need an action to approve the signing of that. So I'll look for a motion to approve the signing of the canvass for the 2024 Democratic presidential primary election.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you.
If I start with Matt, can we?
Yep.
Are you okay on those short ones, Katie?
So moved.
Okay, all right.
Okay. I didn't want to say anything.
Well, I tried to kind of make the motion for you to begin
Yeah, and I
with.
appreciate that.
Those are the easy motions.
And we could repeat it, and then you could
Yeah,
repeat
I can repeat it back.
That would be correct parliamentary procedure.
Oh, here, that's Katie.
While they're signing, there is a little slip of paper at the front where you sign in. They are seeking any type of input you have on the I-84 interchange, and so there's an email address and a website on there if anyone's interested in submitting comment for the I-84 interchange. That contact information is on the sign-in table.
Okay. While we're finishing that last signature, I think we can go ahead and move to action item number 3, Sheriff Stark. Discussion and review and approval of an MOU between between Morgan County and Wasatch Peaks Resort for law enforcement services.
So for the past probably year and a half, Wasatch Peaks has had some difficulty with speeds and accidents up there. Of course, being private property, we're not able to enforce speeds unless we're entered into a contract, but we still have to go handle the accidents. So Wasatch Peaks approached me asking to enter into an agreement. I reached out to Summit County, who has several private property contracts. They sent one of their MOUs over. We kind of implemented that same thing, and here we are. However, I believe I sent you where they was asking for 6 hours a day. They have changed that now to 3 hours a day.
Looks like that's what's in our packet, is the 3 hours.
Okay.
And a question I have on it is, why is it only from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. and not 24 hours a day?
They want to do it during construction hours when they're actually having problems with speed.
Not the residents that are the problem, it sounds like.
Yeah, that's why I was trying to figure out what the problem was.
It's those guys driving those track hose at 50 miles an hour down the road.
Now, I have some more questions.
I assume, Garrett, you've reviewed this and do you have
Yes,
any
we
concerns?
provided a red line immediately because it kind of came quick, and so we got it right back. And I only saw, if you look, I think it's on that page under paragraph 5. It says county in his, and I wish I would have caught in its. I can't read it that far, but in its
Injuring the county?
contact or via
His
contact representative instead of his, so I missed that in the initial red line, but I don't think it's unambiguous.
In terms of keeping track of hours and invoicing, I assume you've got that covered through your department.
Yes.
Good
So,
plan for that.
My question on that is the check gonna come to the Morgan County under the Sheriff's Department, or is it going directly to the Sheriff's Department?
No, it'll go to Morgan County.
Come to the Morgan County itself.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure of that, because what's gonna happen now is we're gonna have to, every quarter, we're gonna have to do a budget, revenue increase for the budget.
Well, what
But-
we can do moving forward is, after this year, we'll just put it in the budget as a revenue
Right.
line item.
But this year, we're
We'll
gonna
have
have to put it in.
at least an estimate.
As of this year, right now, they just want to do a contract for 8 months to see how it goes from there.
Okay, that's fine.
How do you handle the coverage with the rest of the county? Are you just bringing an extra
This is
officer on?
overtime. This is people that signed up for overtime when they're off duty.
Okay.
So is that enough to handle overtime?
Yeah.
Yeah, the wage would handle overtime. Or the dollar amount would handle
Yeah,
overtime.
we made it to where even at our highest paid guy, the county would still be making.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we approve the special services agreement between Morgan County and Wasatch Peaks Ranch as presented.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve the MOU between Morgan County and Wasatch Peaks Resort for Law Enforcement Services. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you.
Chair, would you like to sign this now?
I think I have a copy right here. I do. I've got the copy, so I'll
Okay.
sign it and get it to you.
Oh,
Oh, you have the one that's countersigned? Yeah, then maybe let's trade here, or you can hand me that one and I'll get it signed. Okay, moving to action item number 4, request for approval of a countywide mutual aid fire protection agreement with Weber County. Chief Kerrigan.
Good evening, Council Commissioners. Just here to get approval to have Morgan County added to the Weber County mutual aid agreement. This agreement is basically like all the other ones that we do with the fire departments. It basically covers us for liability. Most of the time, we have Weber County come into our area to give us a hand. This will allow us to go into their area as well, although that would happen very minimal, if at all. Obviously, they have more resources than we do. So for the first time ever, we've been invited to be on this contract or this mutual aid agreement. So right now, the mutual aid agreement itself is being reworked. Garrett's had his chance to redline a few things, and we've passed it on to them. So tonight, I'm just asking for permission to have Morgan County added to this agreement.
We're not actually signing the agreement today, we're just going to
Correct.
be added to it, because it looks like this agreement was back in 2018, 2019.
Right, so they'll circulate a new agreement. And part of what the red line was is to add Morgan County as a party, to talk about services within Morgan County, similar to what we talked about at last meeting. And we're hoping that all of our red lines will be accepted. They will be.
But we also want to make sure this is something the commission approves of.
So does that include, I mean, there's nothing in here on Mountain Green Sewer, or what?
Mountain
Fire
Green
District?
will also join
That's
it.
part of the red line as well.
But they're independent. I mean, they
But
make
I
the
mean,
determination if
it's
they're
not
going to
on
join
here
it.
as a entity that we're joining with, is all I'm saying. Is they're not on this agreement that we're gonna join with everybody else, it needs to also include everybody else.
Yep, it will.
Okay.
Yeah, right now, it doesn't include us. So.
Right.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's what I'm
I,
saying.
I think anytime we can have a mutual aid agreement with other entities, it's a good thing.
It is.
It benefits us. It reduces our liability for charges should they come either way, right? And
Right.
if we go to help them, it also just builds a sense of community and gives us training opportunities.
It does.
So,
And if I'm not incorrect, we are the first non-district to be invited, correct?
Right.
Because Boyd's amazing.
it's awesome. Yeah, I think that says a lot about the leadership within our department. So
Thanks, Mike.
they would not invite us if they didn't like what was going on here. So I
Correct.
appreciate what you. Okay.
So I'm not sure what this would be.
I don't know that we need a motion necessarily. It was more to
Yeah.
see if you had any hesitations of proceeding, because when it comes back with all the red lines, then we'll have to pass it at that point. I think this was more for information and to see if there were any hesitancies the commission had with joining in this agreement and moving a red line forward.
And I suppose we could still do a motion to direct staff to proceed with negotiating and joining the
Yeah.
mutual aid agreement.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we direct the staff to negotiate the countywide mutual aid fire protection agreement with Weber County.
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Motion by Mr. I was going to say member, Commissioner McConnell, seconded by Commissioner Fackrell. I'm going to try to do this to help you with your minutes here. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes and is unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, action item number 5. Planning Department, Wasatch Peak Subdivision, Phase 5A, final plat.
Thank you, and good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the County Commission. Action item F is for application number 24.005, which is the Wasatch Peaks Ranch Subdivision, Phase 5A final plat. The property address, or rather access to it, is located at approximately 4213 North Morgan Valley Drive near Peterson. The acreage for this section of the WPR property is 97.5 acres. And the zoning, of course, is the Resort Special District with the Wasatch Peaks Ranch Development Agreement as an overlay. The subdivision is for 21 lots and is identified also by the section and township and range numbers located in your meeting packet tonight, Mr. Chair. And for context, the preliminary plat was approved by this commission in November 21 of 2023. A lot has happened since then for this project, and we're glad to see this one come forward for, again, final plat approval, where the application would have been submitted around January 22nd of this year, and it would have come out of the pre-review process on January 31. Since then, it's gone through the review to receive approval specifically from the county engineer and also from the Morgan County Fire Department. And Mr. Chair, I can answer any questions you may have, and the applicant is in the audience tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for staff?
Yeah, I do for staff. I'm just kind of curious, when you guys are doing these things, why is it that you still are going to council versus commission?
Is that in when it talks about the code discussion of Morgan County Code? I see.
Yeah, like in 155.412, final plat
It's actually funny
purpose,
'cause that's the updated
city
reference.
council, and then it's throughout the rest of the thing. And
So-
I just thought we had asked you guys to try to change this stuff, and I don't know why it hasn't been done yet. Other than you guys are understaffed.
The response to that would be if our online code still references the county council, then we're going to include those code sections as written. We can look to see updating the online version of the ordinance and our code to make sure everything says commission instead of council.
All right.
I thought
Just-
we paid to have that done, did we not, Garrett?
I thought we had.
We did. I'm just looking online. It has International Code Council. I think it has been updated to commission, except for the International Fire Code Council, International Code Council. I think all of the ones, Western State Seismic Policy Council, those are the only references to council that I can see, but I think it has been updated online.
In that case, we'll update our staff reports accordingly.
Okay.
But it wasn't until very recently that was finalized.
6 months ago. So that's recent in government. I have another question on it, and somebody can just explain this to me. If it's a resort special district and it was rezoned to that, why do we have to put in their underlying zone F1?
It layers in that sense where the forestry zone is what it was before and is, I don't know if the rezone happened to resort special district, but there is a development agreement.
Yeah,
know.
it was rezoned to resort special district. I'll check our code. I thought it was an overlay, but I can double check. And if it's
I'm just curious as to why it is when we rezoned it, or it was rezoned to a resort special district. Why don't we, and a development agreement, why do we have to put in F1? Because it's not F1 anymore.
if the resort special district is an overlay, then the underlying zoning would still remain F1. I'll look into that.
Okay, I'm
I'm
just
fairly
curious.
certain it was not an overlay, Josh, but I'll
Yeah,
defer to
I'll
you to
into
look into it and confirm.
Okay. That's all I have for, I think, for staff. That's it, for staff. I do have other questions.
Any other
That
questions
is
for staff,
on-
Commissioner Wilson?
I just, on lot 38, I couldn't tell, is that an ingress and an egress that runs through there for fire, or is that within length of?
You got C38 and, or C39 and C40.
Looks like it's a driveway.
Okay, all right,
Right.
so that would give them egress and ingress, okay. Okay, no question.
That's what I had to.
Okay. Should we hear from the applicant? Any questions for the applicant?
Here, I was hoping you'd speak
Happy
for
to
us.
hear from I did have just one question. I was having a hard time seeing exactly where this is on the overall plan. Ed, can you just kind of roughly tell us where this is in your overall?
Right when you're coming up through the gatehouse and then you get to the four-way, the sewer alignment's taking a right there. It's that road with the kind of northwesterly sewer alignment.
Okay.
And then it spurs off within a few hundred feet to the left is where Lupine Road then climbs up the hill.
Okay. So that kind of strip that's through there, is that your sewer easement? Is that what that is?
It is, yep. That's the main road heading north, and it'll head to future development phases. Phase 6 is still out that way. But that sewer alignment also is underneath that road.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Oh, well, and so there is also a chairlift through there. So there is the
Oh,
easement.
okay. I think that's what I was thinking of.
Okay.
It's on the left
If-
side of that.
Yeah. So
It's not that
Go to
one.
the next, the one after this. That one. That left side, that strip, that's the chairlift?
That's the chairlift.
Okay.
And those homes on the other side of the street off the plat Those are the 4 homes that are under construction right now. There's a number of phase 1
The
lots
ones that
in
are on
there.
the left side there.
Correct. So, and they'll ski down to that chairlift, and we reserved an easement through those home sites for the chairlift, and it actually goes over one of the driveways.
Cool.
Sorry about the confusion on the road. Yeah, for access.
Oh, no, that's great. Any questions for the applicant?
Just glad to see you back.
It's
nice
glad
be
to have you back.
Thank you.
Okay, we will look for a motion on action item number 5. Wasatch Peak subdivision Phase 5A final plat.
Okay, I will, if I can get it right. I move we approve the Wasatch Peaks Ranch subdivision Phase 5A final plat, application number 24.005, allowing for a 21 lot subdivision of land located at approximately 4213 North Morgan Valley Drive in unincorporated Morgan County, based on the findings and with the conditions listed in the staff report dated March 19th, 2024.
Second?
It's been motioned and seconded to approve Wasatch Peak subdivision Phase 5A final plat. Motion was made by Commissioner Fackrell and seconded by Commissioner Wilson. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Action item number 6. Back to our planning department. This is a request to amend Morgan County Code by modifying section MCC 155.028 Planning Commission organization.
Thank you. Staff was directed to bring options back to the county commission for reorganization of the planning commission. The original public hearing for this was held at the planning commission on January 11th. The planning commission forwarded a recommendation of denial. It was then heard by the county commission on, I believe, January 16th, where the second public hearing was held. After that point, it's been continued 2 times for additional comment and redraft. And then we held a work session on March 7th for additional comment and discussion. With that, staff has presented to you 2 options, draft 1 and draft 2. And if there's additional discussion or comment, we can have that now.
Okay. We have discussed this in a couple of work sessions. I'm certainly in favor of the draft 2, which keeps the planning commission at 7 members. 5 are nominated by the commission and then, of course, ratified by the commission as well. And then 2 are at-large planning commission seats where residents can apply for those positions through the planning department. Those are also, of course, appointed and ratified by the commission as well.
That's correct.
When would this take place? And because then we would be without a planning commission if we did it tonight? Or would it be an effective date of April 1st, or?
Well, the ordinances take 15 to 30 days before they go live anyway, or to leave it for the appeal period. In the interim, before we get new planning commissioners appointed, it would be expected that the current planning commission will continue to sit until such time as
And Garrett, correct me if I'm wrong, but we could determine that time period as part of this motion, correct?
You can set an effective day, and then in our ordinance language it says, but not 15 days, not before 15 days after publication in accordance with Utah state law.
So we could
So set it at
potentially say
least
by
15 days, but maybe
May
a little bit
1st
further
or
out.
May 31st or something of that nature.
Right.
And that allows for, after the 15 days, for somebody to go and apply for it in those 2 at-large spots?
Well, they could probably, you
Or
could
could they
post
apply
for them
now?
to apply now,
Well, that's
right?
what I'm
I don't see why
wondering.
they couldn't do
Right.
that.
Maybe if we made an effective date like June 1, then we could solicit applicants. We can each think about and make our nominations. I think that's plenty of time. We could
I
probably
think it's,
shorten it down.
let's shorten it.
Got an effective
Well, we can always
date.
make it shorter. without having to have that date on this motion, correct?
Well, the effective
couldn't-
date would be in the ordinance. And so I think you
Oh,
would
you
want to
mean
set.
the new planning commission to be effective of that date, January
Right.
1st.
Yeah, whatever that date is, but it might depend on, okay, do you go with option 1 or option 2? If you go with one or the other, it may change the time frame that, you know.
The reason I'm asking is because you've got, not 3 new commissioners, but a potential 2 new commissioners coming on in November. And that means these planning members would not be able to serve very much time. So, I'm just looking at time for them to be able to serve, whoever it is we choose.
Well, they,
Unless they're reappointed, right?
to be honest, I would guess that several of the current members will probably be some of the people we would select anyway, but maybe I'm wrong.
So there's a distinction between the effective date in the ordinance and the date upon which we want the new planning commission to be seated.
That's true.
So my June 1st date relates to the latter.
When they would take the,
That gives us time to appoint,
I would like it,
vote.
I would like it to be in May, only because Mike won't be here in June. And I want his input.
I'll be joining just briefly.
Okay.
Well,
And the decision's made tonight.
What's that?
'Cause it's gonna be
So the
June.
decision for if there's a change in the ordinance is made tonight, and then it'll just be maybe ratification to, like, you could, I guess technically, if you went with the second one, you can nominate, and then maybe at the second meeting in May, if it's June 1st, maybe that's the date that you nominate and, what is it, ratify. That's the day that you would ratify the commission members, so that they have a little bit of lead time before the June meeting.
Well, and the truth is, this is not a reorganization of the commission as it stands now. This is just determining how those planning commission members will be selected moving forward.
That's correct.
So even if we put it into effect, it's not like it automatically vacates the seats. It simply changes how we're going to select them.
And it may not change any seats.
May not.
If they're all selected the same way as well. But it would allow those 2 at large to still make those applications. And part of it is, Josh can speak more to this, but we don't get a ton of applications, and so this hopefully would allow for more communication between the nominated planning commission member and their commissioner with what's going on and things that are coming up, but still allowing those that want to be involved to apply. But I think Commissioner McConnell's point is good, that the effective date will just be based upon 15 days after publishing the ordinance, as far as the effective date of the ordinance, but the change to the commission could be a different date.
Okay, I'm thinking you're gonna be making that motion.
Yeah, me too. Oh, it's right there for us.
Well, no, it's
Except it's
not.
gotta
It's
be
not got any
June.
effective dates or ratification dates or.
So I can make a motion. But is it a positive recommendation?
No, it's an approval.
So, Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we approve the revision to the Morgan County Code, Section 155.028, to recognize the Planning Commission, reorganize the Planning Commission based on the text of draft number 2 listed in Exhibit A of the staff report dated March 19th, 2024, with appointment of the new commissioners to occur such that they can be seated as of June 1st, 2024.
Second.
Motion to approve, motion by Commissioner McConnell, second by Commissioner Fackrell. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Okay, action item number 7, request approval of text amendments to modify Morgan County Code 155.008 and 155.426 lots. This amendment would reintroduce language for flag lots.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm not exactly sure it's reintroducing language, but rather flag lots exist in the county, and this would make those lots not non-conforming anymore, but rather conforming. And so there's been a lot of discussion on this item spanning several months over 2 separate years. In this case, the Planning Commission held multiple, and again, this is a recap for the benefit of the public, and just briefly, 4 work sessions from the Planning Commission, and then multiple, public hearing, and then multiple administrative meetings to discuss the flag lots, leading to a recommendation for denial by the Planning Commission on December 28th. And the findings were discussed, coming from the Planning Commission, were discussed in a meeting, I do believe on January 16, before this body. There's been multiple meetings here on January 16, February 20. Also, for the benefit of the public, there was a work session held on March 7 to iron out some concerns with the current language of the text that you see before you. Well, rather, it got to this point, and draft 2 is being viewed favorably by this commission. But otherwise, that's my recap, Mr. Chair, and staff recommends approval of this item. Thank you.
Thank you. Josh, I noticed on number 4, you updated the distance to be 750 feet. And the number is updated, but the written word is not? Okay. Just as long as we, excellent.
There's also in that, you have item 5 but no 6, and then it goes from 5 to 7.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, just do that.
And I have a few questions. On this, it say it may be created by subdivision in any single-family residential zone if the following requirements are met. My question is what is the minimum size, and it does not say it in here, minimum size for somebody to be able to put in a flag lot?
To meet the underlying zoning.
That is correct. The minimum size is the underlying zoning.
All right, that sounds good.
Is that something that we ought to put in here, though, just for clarification, do you think, Josh? Like, maybe that should be our number 6?
I can add that in.
It just might be helpful to avoid people saying, well, it doesn't say anything about the size of the lot
Right.
here.
Right.
Yep, I can add that in.
And then the other question
And
I
be
have.
clear that the entire lot must be part of the underlying zoning, or at least all the portion that,
Is counted towards.
I don't know how we typically phrase that. But
Okay. I'll word it.
Okay. Then I have a question on it also, is when this is recorded as a flag lot, does it become a separate lot? Or does it, is it owned by the original person, or is it completely a separate lot?
Separate. It should
Yeah.
have a
Deeded
separate
out
description
and so forth.
everything.
Yeah, once it's divided through subdivision, it becomes a separate lot. And in order to make it a developable lot, you can't record it by meets and bounds legal description. You have to go through the subdivision process to create that second additional developable lot, which is the flag lot, which can then be sold.
And so the size of the home then is not gonna be like the detached accessory dwelling unit where it's a certain percentage of the original home?
Detached accessory dwelling unit is completely separate from the flag lots. Each lot that's created has the opportunity to create their own accessory dwelling unit, whether it's internal or detached.
And are we going to put this into certain areas of the county or the whole county, countywide?
As defined in the section, it says all single family.
But it should be noted, due to our tunnel zoning in much of the county, most of those lots wouldn't be eligible to do it.
Right, because they don't have 20 acres in the 820. So in order to do it, they would have to come before the legislative body and rezone their property, which is not a guarantee.
Okay. And the minimum size of the flag lot pole, I mean the pole or the flag lot driveway is 26 feet, is that correct?
Minimum width of the flag pole is 26 feet, which is the minimum requirements for a private lane or shared driveway.
That's the width, though.
Right.
Yeah, that's the width.
And so, if on this, if the lot is facing, if they don't have the 226 on our RR1, if they don't have the 226 feet, because that's what they'd be required, right?
That's correct.
Because on a regular one lot, it would be 200 feet. But for the flag lot, they'd have to have 26 more feet, is correct?
That's correct. They'd need 226 feet to create a flag lot.
So how, if they've got that, I'm just trying to think of some of the lots in Morgan County that they're gonna put the house out front, or they want to put the house out front and keep their existing home as the lot in the back. Can they do that still?
Yeah, but they'd have to design it so that it meets minimum code requirements.
Okay, I'm just curious.
If they have the acreage in the zoning and they have the frontage. And that's why one of the concerns that has been brought up with this whole thing is that it could really boom, right, potentially, and people are thinking about all these homes along Morgan Valley Drive and Old Highway and areas where they have space behind their home, but because the vast majority of those either don't have over 200 feet of frontage or do not have more than, or 2 full acres in the RR1 zoning, they're not going to qualify for this. So that really limits the lots that are going to qualify.
So that would also mean that they'd have to have their own new well and new septic, or hooked
Well,
to
and if you're in
another-
a well and a septic, you're going to have an issue too, because you're going to need more than just an acre.
Right.
Well,
Which also further reduces the number that are going to be
I
able
just
to do this.
clarifying it because it's not in this ordinance, and I'm just trying to figure it out.
Well, there's a whole lot more that you have to, because this is just what allows it. Now you've got to go to the subdivision ordinance and go through the whole subdivision ordinance to.
Because it
all those
does
items.
not, is there a place in this ordinance that says that they're gonna have to go to that other ordinance to make sure everything's fitting right, or is it just,
Well,
a link to it?
That first line
No,
says may
it's-
be created by subdivision. That's what tells you got to go to the subdivision ordinance.
Yeah, all the lot standards are defined in the zoning ordinance in the use section for the type of zone it is. And those are clearly defined: front yard, setback, side yard, rear yard, lot coverage, width requirements, all of that is clearly defined. The subdivision, if you're gonna go through the subdivision process to create a flag lot, you also have to go through the subdivision regulations that are in our code as well. And they're clearly defined.
Okay. Are we getting ahead of the game by not having all of our codes taken care of before this, or are we just?
What do you mean taken care of?
Well, if there's any revisions, or are we just gonna just add another code onto the existing?
Well, I see the code as a kind of a living, breathing animal.
Right, it
It's
is.
in constant revision. I mean, all this is doing is saying, instead of saying flag lots are not allowed in subdivisions, it's saying they are if you meet certain requirements. But it doesn't change any of our other ordinance currently. Now, are there other parts of the ordinance that could be updated? Yeah, I'm sure there are.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, any other questions for staff? All right. Look for a motion on item number 7.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we approve ordinance number C0-24-, I'm not sure, in addition to the land use code for Morgan County, amending sections 155.008 definitions and adding section C to section 155.426 lots to define flag lots, otherwise known as the Flag Lots Code Text Amendment, and establishing an effective date with the 2 changes noted in our discussion this evening.
Perfect. And those 2 changes were to update the text where it said 330 to 750 and to redo the numbering to have,
to add
we're gonna
item
keep number 6.
To
Add number
include
6.
a specific reference to the lot size for the applicable zone.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner McConnell and a second by Commissioner Wilson to approve. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes.
And before we move on, I believe that Katie has the designation, and maybe you can just say it on the record so we can know what that ordinance is for those listening, years in the future when they're listening back on our meetings.
Pity this.
Yeah, 24 dash what is it?
The ordinance number will be CO-24-06.
406. Okay.
Yep, we're up to 17 and other. We've had ordinances clear up this. Oh, okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. All right, item number 8, request to go out for RFP for surveyor services for the recorder's office.
Commissioners, this is part of our 5-year plan we discussed in the work session. So part of this is we have not had a county surveyor under contract since 2014. So in 8 and 9, we were discussing that going out for that surveyor spots for both the planning department and the recorder. This one is specific to the recorder's office, number 8. It's pretty much a generic RFP, so it should cover everything that she specifically wants, as well as any additional needs that she could have for a county surveyor. And then subsequently, number 9 is a request to go out for RFP for surveyor work, specifically to planning for the things that they specifically need, with flexibility to add as needed.
Brenda, do you have anything you'd like to add?
With doing it this way, it's going to separate what we currently was, which was the surveying of corners was done through the recorder's office, as well as the flexibility of having them look at the subdivision plats. We just went through instead of having them build the recorder's office and then turn it over to planning and zoning, we just had it directly billed to them. It was brought forth through me by looking at other counties, instead of the county bearing the burden of having a surveyor and the engineer to look at it and pay for it. It goes through the applicant. So anyways, and so that's where we are, is trying to get this out for bid and get somebody under contract, as we should have done a while ago.
Perfect, thank you. Any questions for Brenda or Kate? All right, not, we'll look for a motion on action item number 8.
Make a motion that we send out for an RFP for surveyor services for the recorder's office, specifically for subdivisions and section corners.
Second.
We have a motion made by Commissioner Wilson and a second by Commissioner McConnell to approve. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes, thank you. Okay, action item number 9, you kind of covered this
Yep, same thing, but this
previously.
is for
really the
the
same
planning
thing, just
department.
planning department. Any questions for Josh? Okay. If not, we'll look for a motion.
I'll make a motion that we send for an RFP for surveyor services for the planning department, specifically for review of preliminary plats, review of final plats, and signature of the final Mylar.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Wilson and a second
By both of us.
by Commissioner McConnell. We'll give it to him. I heard him loudest, probably because he's closest to me. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
That brings us to our Commissioner comments section. Commissioner Anderson is not with us this evening. I do not have any new comments, so I will hand it off to Commissioner Fackrell.
I don't have a lot, other than how did you like your $1 million bill? That was, if anybody would like to feel what a $1 million bill could look like, all of these guys have one. Also, we had a trip, Brett Heiner and I went to Redmond Mines last week, and that's where this real salt container comes from. And it's a company that, anyway, when you go down there, they're, number one, they're trying to sell us salt, and number two is it's a good day. It was a great day to meet with legislators that were there, the senators that were there, the commissioners. I think there was only 1 or 2 other commissioners there. And it was a good day for them to go and shoot dynamite also, and enjoy the cold, because it was super cold. It was below freezing, and but going down inside the mine to see how it all works inside there is pretty fascinating. And if you have not been there, I recommend that you try to go one of these times. So, and other than that,
But in a weekday in the middle of the week, it's hard to get away from work.
well, that's true. That's the advantage of being retired, I guess. Also, we had a meeting with, Jared and I had a meeting with another engineering firm to see if we could talk about trying to get some funding for a potential regional water. And we'll let you know as time goes on that. Another request by one of our constituents was that they're saying that our business applications are too cumbersome in the county versus the city. And so I'm just wondering if there's something we can do to make ours more amenable. Because if they were to go to the city and get a business license, it doesn't take very long. In our county, it can take up to months. So that's about it for now.
Okay.
So we could certainly look at what the requirements are, but it would be easier to respond if there was a specific recommendation.
I've heard from multiple people that are having some questions, and we can sit down and we can discuss it. I just wanted to bring that up to you, that maybe we need to discuss it.
And if I'm aware of who some of those might be that are reaching out to you, part of it is it takes longer when they don't supply just the basic information to get the application going. And so it might just be a matter of communication or a willingness of the applicant, because for most of our applicants, I think it's a very quick process.
Well, I think there's some ambiguity in there also because, I mean, if I'm looking at my own business, I was told by the county clerk I did not need one. Yet everybody else that's happening to do one is required to do one, and I'm excluded because it's agricultural. Well, the only problem with that agricultural is I deliver my product outside, you know, from my place to somewhere else. They don't come to my place to buy it, but I still deliver it outside. So I was told I did not have to have a business license. Do I or do I not? So there's circumstances I think we need to go through and determine, okay, what is really truly a need for a business license and what is not. And I'm finding that there's nothing, I mean, there's some other things in there that are not there. And I'm a rural residential or agriculture also. And so those are some of the questions I personally have. And I know Josh and I have had a discussion on this, and he wants to speak some more on it. But I'm just saying that there is a discussion that we need to have on this.
So it sounds like we have an action for staff to review our business license
Yes.
procedure. Okay.
And I think to Commissioner McConnell's point, if you have any specifics, that is helpful in the review by staff. Because, I mean, there's a lot of questions that come in from residents that it may just be a matter of reading the code a little bit further rather than there's an issue with the code. And so if you do have specifics, my request to you is to get that to staff as well, because
Okay.
that will help it, you know, not waste county resources reviewing something that may not need to be reviewed or is a matter of, you know, someone not providing the information to move their application forward.
Or applying when told that they need to.
Yeah. That's fine. I'm just saying, I mean, here I am I going to be penalized for not having a business license, yet I've got one from the state, and I've got, you know, all the other stuff, but yet you're not requiring it. Why? I'm just saying, let's look at fairness.
I'm writing down a violation.
That's all right.
Sounds
That's
like
all right. What I'm
commissioner
saying
preference.
is I was
Preferential treatment to a commissioner sounds to me like.
But the thing is this was long before I ever became a commissioner. I was a young kid then. So I'm just saying that, you know, if there's a problem, there's a problem. And what I want to do is just get it fair for everybody, not just for a few, and not for those that are simple. I want it fair for every single person in this county.
Implying that
This
I'm
is the
not-
first time I've even heard of this. I've had lots of friends apply for licenses in the
Maybe
county and
yours
not
are
have a
maybe
problem.
yours are privileged.
No, they probably just provide the stuff that they need.
Okay, well, we can go through it. So anyway, just a concern that I have.
Okay, Commissioner McConnell.
Okay, with respect to Zion's public finance, I sent an email about the impact fee. Are we going to schedule that meeting or?
What was the question?
You had sent me an email about the impact fee
Yes,
study.
and then you requested a possible Zoom
Yeah.
with you and other persons. I'm trying to get that scheduled.
Okay, all right. I don't have anything for you. Thank you.
On that, do we want to loop in possible fees, a fee study on PID with that?
Well, I think that could be as part of the overall fee study, and we'll
Okay.
just separate it out the end.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent. Commissioner Wilson? Okay,
We are doing closed session though, right?
correct. So, that being said, one of you want to make that motion?
Commissioner Wilson. Or I can.
Do you have, I don't know what you're gonna make it
Okay.
for, so.
I move, do you want to make the motion
Go
now?
ahead.
Okay. I move that we go into closed session for the purpose of personnel.
Character and professional competency of an individual.
Okay, thank you for finishing that for me, 'cause I don't know it all the time.
And property.
And acquisition or disposition of property.
And then also for legal
And
pending or.
pending or reasonably imminent litigation.
Boy, we got a lot.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. The closed session, once again, is for the purpose of discussing character and competency, professional competency of an individual, the purchase or disposition of real property, and pending or imminent litigation. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
Does that have to be roll call?
Motion passes.
May we have a quick break, bathroom break?
Yeah,